Hello there, and it is Wednesday. It's super hot. It's 90 degrees here in Los Angeles on an October day. My name is Julie Hirschberg. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, the owner and founder of Reactive Therapy and Wellness in Los Angeles on this very hot October day. Thanks so much for joining me today. And as usual, we are talking about some of the things that we're learning and doing here at Reactive. And this week and the last few weeks, it's been all about dystonia because Chelsea Richardson and I are putting together a dystonia mini course for our fellow healthcare professionals, and we've been diving into the literature. We've been sharing a lot of what we're doing, and we shared a particular case the other day, and I got a great question. It was like, what does the physical therapy treatment look like in this case? And this is a case of a person with cervical dystonia. So I just want to share with you this case. This is not actually somebody that I worked with, but our team worked with. This is somebody that came to Reactive from out of state for a dystonia intensive program where they spent 2 weeks with us. And this is not their actual name. So this is anonymous, not their actual picture. But this is somebody who had dystonia for a couple of years, and it caused abnormal and involuntary movements in the neck, causing head tilt, muscle spasms, some tremor, and pulling. Very common presentation in cervical dystonia. And then what you can see in this pie chart, which is really what I wanted to get to today, is what this person and their team really put together as the key components contributing to the dystonia. And you can see the biggest picture of the pie here is sensory. You can also see motor control, you can see lifestyle, autonomic, physical limitations, and lifestyle being the next biggest pieces. So hence this person got to work with our fabulous OT as well. But this is very individual, right? So they found this through assessment together that this was the biggest piece of the pie. And it's no surprise in dystonia, sensory is often the biggest component of the pie. We see that a lot. And then I want to show you here, whoops, wrong button. Then I want to show you the outcomes. So he had a 2-week program, as I mentioned, physical therapy 4 times a week, psychology twice a week, occupational therapy 4 times a week, and yoga therapy twice a week. And then you can see his changes in self-efficacy, his change in function, and decreased avoidance of activities was just a really big one, and a lowering of stress. All of these pieces really showing getting back to life with dystonia. Some of the other things that were also tested, one of the measures that we love using for cervical dystonia is the twisters. It's the Toronto Western Spasmodic Torticollis scale, or twisters. And it's a nice scale that looks at actually what is that person's range of motion control, what positions can they get into, do they require sensory tricks, what's their pain level, and then how it impacts their everyday life and participation. And so that's not on here, but as I went through and reviewed this case to share with you all, that twister score also improved. So not only did life improve, but actually control of the head and neck improved, which is really great. That's what you want to see in dystonia, right? So I want to bring back then to this question that somebody asked, which was, what do you actually do? And the person asked for PT. So I'll give you some of, in this particular case, what PT worked on, but I want to give you a broad picture because what I think is really the secret sauce is an integrated team working together with somebody with dystonia. So I know the writing is really tiny here, but I want to give you some of the ideas in each of these categories, but I'm going to start with sensory. So that's that big green. It's not lime green. It's not quite like dark green. Kelly Green, maybe the Kelly Green box, and the sensory system. Now, what is really unique in dystonia is it's not that primary sensation is impaired, not usually. So if you just test and screen your typical sensory tests, these are like what we teach in PT school: light touch, vibration, proprioception. That's usually not impaired, but it's our higher order sensation might be impaired, or 2-point discrimination might be impaired. So those are things that you would test, and you would actually test them in the neck, for example. So we might do a 9-grid test, which is essentially drawing like a grid, maybe on a picture, not on the person all the time, of 9 parts, like thinking of like tic-tac-toe. And the person has to identify where you are touching them. So it's kind of mapping out the picture of the neck in the brain. And then you can test that and treat that. So by the way, when I talk about these treatment pieces, you wouldn't go in and treat sensory components if there's no sensory deficit. So a very good, thorough assessment drives the treatment. So the 9-grid might be one way. We love testing and treating joint position errors. So that's where we use a laser lamp on the forehead, use the target on the wall, and we can actually test how accurate that person's joint perception is. I like to do this in the head, but also in the body. So you could put the laser on the body and also do the same thing. You could do the same thing on all the limbs as well. It's great for focal dystonia. I know we were kind of talking about cervical dystonia because that was the case that I shared, but you could do this with any dystonia. Another really common sensory piece that you want to look at in cervical dystonia is the vestibular system, as well as the visual system. Because if there is a skew or some deviation there, whether that's otolith, semicircular canal, the integration of these pieces together, that you could imagine could actually cause a head tilt. So you want to screen that, and then you can incorporate it into treatment, which brings me into some of the really great sensory treatments that we can do in dystonia, in cervical dystonia, and in this case, for example, using things like weighting. So weighted neck pillows, weighted vest, weighted headband are some of our favorite ways to affect the sensory system. Doing things in different positions as well. So doing them supine, doing them inverted, doing them in prone, quadruped, and working our way up to the most challenging position. Often the most challenging position for people is in upright. In walking, there's much more visual activity that way, or in maybe their sport-specific activities. So we would start where that person doesn't have some of the involuntary muscle activity, and then progress to some of those other activities. And that was definitely the case in this case that we shared of progressing to the different activities. So much that we can do from the sensory system side. We actually can do very simple sensory things like adding tens to the dystonic muscle. Some people that's really helpful. Other people, it actually makes it worse. And so, by the way, I am sharing this for my fellow healthcare providers to try with people. This isn't medical advice. So I'm not saying go, if you're a person with dystonia, go throw tens on your muscle. There's contraindications to tens or muscle stimulation. And so that's not something that I'm recommending for people. But trialing these things with your healthcare provider, absolutely. Absolutely. So those were a few of the sensory treatment ideas. Let's talk about lifestyle. So In this particular case, and in the cases of people that work with us in our intensive programs, they're working directly with OT and lifestyle redesign. One of the biggest things that we typically see is sleep dysregulation. Now, sometimes that's directly due to the dystonia and getting comfortable. So we have to explore different positions. In fact, Malia, one of our great OTs, brought up this question today in our grand rounds to have us problem solve about sleep positioning with a patient to get them more comfortable. But there's loads more that go into having a good night's sleep. And I'm so thankful for our OT team who are actually trained in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia and can use some of those techniques to really help people get the sleep that they need. Because we know in dystonia that a big part of treatment, if we want to induce neuroplastic changes in the brain, we need the substrate, we need the health of the brain to be at its just optimum. And if somebody's not sleeping, their brain health is not optimal. So our OTs play a huge role in this. And when somebody's sleep starts getting regulated, we can then capitalize on all the sensory and motor training that is so helpful for people. Now, finally, I want to hit on the physical impairment part. This is typically where people will start with dystonia. So they feel a muscle pulling and they'll want to massage it or stretch it, or they'll work with a physical therapist to work on those, manual therapy type of skills. And you know what? There is a place for that. Absolutely. Especially after somebody's had dystonia for a while, there are imbalances. There's muscle length changes that need to be addressed. That's just not the only thing. So when we're working the sensory, the motor control, the lifestyle, all of these pieces of the pie, we don't want to leave out the physical impairments. Those are also really important. We also just don't want to be the only thing. That is for sure where most people have said, oh yeah, I tried therapy. I tried physical therapy for my dystonia. We did some stretches, some strengthening, some soft tissue work. It felt good, but it was temporary. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That is not going to change the dystonia. It will change the position, maybe of the neck, the length tension relationship in the muscles, but it's not going to change that abnormal drive that is an excitability in the nervous system that's causing the dystonia. That is only going to change when we address motor control and sensory and psychosocial lifestyle and autonomic pieces. So those are all pieces of our dystonia pie. And these were, again, I'll just switch back to this case here. This is what we addressed in this case. And this person had a great outcome. And this is exactly what we're talking about in our dystonia mini course that's coming up next month. Chelsea Richardson and I, in fact, Chelsea just sent me a message like, put a ton of great videos and ideas, and we're literally hitting on each piece of this pie. So we're going to hit on motor control assessment and treatment, sensory assessment and treatment, psychosocial assessment and treatment, lifestyle, autonomic, and physical limitations. We've got a lot of great videos, all different types. We've got cases of people with cervical dystonia, runner's dystonia, task-specific hand dystonia, and so many creative ideas because our team is so creative. I just love seeing what happens when our team comes together for a person. So our mini course is next month. It's November 10th. And all through tomorrow, we have our early bird price on that. So if you want to check it out, it's at reactiveeducation.com/dystonia. And that's our mini course. And again, there's an early bird price good through tomorrow. So I love an early bird. Don't miss out on the early bird. And if you want these videos and all of the resources and articles that we're we're describing and sharing, join our newsletter. So if you're a healthcare provider, that's reactiveeducation.com. If you're a person with a neurologic disorder and looking for something geared towards you, that is reactivept.com. I hope you'll join us there. And you know what? If you've got dystonia questions, send them my way. I would love to hear from you. Love talking about assessment and treatment and ideas that can help you get the best outcomes for your clients with dystonia. So thanks so much for joining me today in this hot LA day, and I will see you soon. Have a good night.